In the vast darkness between stars, where the screams of dying worlds echo through the void, there exists a species so feared that entire galactic civilizations would rather burn their own planets than face them in battle. They are called the Grimspawn, 7-foot-tall killing machines with obsidian skin, razor-sharp claws that can tear through starship hulls, and eyes that glow like dying suns. For 3,000 years, they have been the galaxy's apex predators, the monsters that other monsters tell stories about in hushed whispers. But today, something impossible is about to happen. Today, for the first time in recorded history, a Grimspawn warrior will speak a word that doesn't mean death, destruction, or surrender. A word so alien to their nature that when it leaves their lips, the most hardened soldiers in the galaxy will tremble not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Hope. Because when humanity's greatest enemy learns the meaning of friendship, the entire universe is about to discover why humans are the most terrifying species of all. Not because of their weapons or their ships, but because of their ability to turn the most ruthless killers into something unprecedented, allies who would die for each other. This is the story of how a single word spoken by the galaxy's most feared warrior changed everything, and why the other alien races began to shake when they realized what humanity had accomplished. Captain Sarah Chun pressed her face against the cold metal of the observation deck, watching the massive Grimspawn warship drift through space like a mountain of black steel and death. The vessel was 3 times the size of her own ship, the UES Defiance, and covered in the characteristic bone-white markings that every human child learned to fear in their nightmares. Those markings told a story written in the blood of conquered worlds, each symbol representing another species that had fallen before the unstoppable Grimspawn war machine. "Captain, they're hailing us," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the communication station, his voice barely steady. The young officer's hands trembled as he worked the controls, and Sarah couldn't blame him. Most humans never saw a Grimspawn ship and lived to tell about it. The fact that they were receiving a communication instead of a plasma bombardment was already beyond anything in the tactical manuals. Sarah straightened her uniform and walked to the center of the bridge, her crew's eyes following her every movement. These men and women had served with her for 3 years, had followed her through impossible battles against the Zephyrian fleet and the Mordak pirates, but this was different. This was the Grimspawn, the species that had turned entire star systems into graveyards, the beings that made hardened Marines wake up screaming in their sleep. "Put them through, Rodriguez. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to make first contact with the Grimspawn. Remember your training, remember your duty, and remember that we represent all of humanity in this moment." The main screen flickered to life, and the bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. The image that appeared made several crew members step backward instinctively. The Grimspawn warrior that filled the screen was everything the stories claimed, and worse. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, its obsidian skin seemed to absorb light itself, creating the illusion that the creature was carved from living shadow. For arms extended from its massive torso, each ending in claws that could tear through reinforced armor like paper. Its head was elongated, almost serpentine, with 6 eyes that glowed like molten gold arranged in 2 rows across its skull. But it was the intelligence behind those eyes that made Sarah's blood run cold. This wasn't a mindless beast or a savage creature driven by instinct. This was a thinking, calculating predator that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war and death. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding stone mixed with a whisper of steel against steel. "Human vessel, I am Warcast Vexhai of the Grimspawn 3rd Fleet. Your species is unknown to us. Explain your presence in this sector before we reduce your ship to atoms and study your remains." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that her next words might determine the fate of not just her crew, but potentially her entire species. "Warcast Vexhai, I am Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Ship Defiance. We are explorers and traders seeking to establish peaceful contact with new civilizations. We mean no harm and carry no weapons capable of threatening your vessel. The Grimspawn's 6 eyes seemed to focus on her with predatory intensity. Peaceful contact, Vexhai repeated, and something that might have been amusement colored his voice. You speak of peace to the Grimspawn? Do you know what we are, small human? We are the children of war itself, born from the fusion of a dying star and the screams of the conquered. We have never known peace, never sought it, never desired it. Your concept is as foreign to us as flight is to stone. Then, perhaps it's time you learned something new, Sarah replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Every species in the galaxy was once something different than what they became. The Zephyrians were once simple farmers before they mastered biotechnology. The Mordax were peaceful philosophers before they developed their quantum weapons. Change is the only constant in the universe, Warcast Vexhai. The alien warrior leaned forward, his massive frame filling more of the screen. You speak boldly for one whose ship we could destroy with a single thought. But your courage interests us. Very well, Captain Shun. We will board your vessel and examine these humans more closely. Prepare to receive us. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Chief Engineer Martinez was the first to speak, his voice hoarse with disbelief. Captain, they're coming aboard. The Grimspawn are actually coming aboard our ship. This has never happened before in recorded history. Sarah nodded, her mind already working through the implications. I know, Chief. Rodriguez, send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we're about to make first contact with the Grimspawn under peaceful circumstances. Security Chief Williams, have your team ready, but keep all weapons holstered. We're going to greet them as guests, not enemies. Security Chief Williams, a gruff veteran with cybernetic implants covering half his face, looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. Captain, with all due respect, these are the Grimspawn. They've been the galaxy's boogeyman for 3,000 years. Every military academy in human space teaches tactics based on how to run from them, because fighting them is suicide. You can't seriously be planning to treat them like visiting dignitaries. That's exactly what I'm planning, Chief, Sarah replied firmly. And here's why. Because no one else has ever tried it. Every encounter with the Grimspawn has started with fear, with assumptions, with the belief that they're nothing but killing machines. But what if they're not? What if, underneath all that armor and weaponry, they're just another species trying to find their place in the universe? Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the ship's chief medical officer and xenobiologist, stepped forward with her tablet in hand. Captain, I've been studying the available data on Grimspawn physiology during our conversation. The interesting thing is that despite their reputation, they're not actually biologically predisposed to violence any more than humans are. Their brain structure, what little we know of it, suggests they're capable of the same range of emotions and social bonds as most sentient species. Then, why are they so aggressive? Asked Lieutenant Rodriguez. Cultural conditioning, Dr. Harper replied. Their entire society appears to be built around warfare and conquest, but that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Cultures can change, especially when they encounter new ideas or experiences that challenge their fundamental assumptions. The ship's sensors detected the approach of a Grimspawn transport shuttle, a sleek craft that moved through space with the predatory grace of a hunting shark. As it docked with the Defiance, Sarah could feel the vibrations through the deck plating. The airlock cycled, and she found herself holding her breath. Warcast Vexhai emerged from the shuttle with 2 other Grimspawn warriors, their massive forms barely fitting through the corridor designed for human proportions. Up close, they were even more intimidating than on the screen. Their armor was covered in intricate engravings that seemed to move and shift in the light, telling the story of battles fought across the galaxy. The air around them seemed to crackle with barely contained energy. But what struck Sarah most was their eyes. Despite their alien nature, despite the fearsome appearance and reputation, there was something unmistakably curious in their gaze as they examined their surroundings. They moved with the controlled precision of apex predators, but they also looked at everything with the attention of scholars studying something genuinely new. Your vessel is smaller than we expected, Vexhai observed, his massive head turning to take in the human-scale corridors and equipment. It travels far from your homeworld. Your species must be either very brave or very foolish. A little of both, probably, Sarah admitted with a slight smile. We humans have a saying, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. We tend to explore first and consider the consequences later. One of Vexhi's companions, a slightly smaller Grimspawn with silver markings on her armor, made a sound that might have been laughter. "I'm Battlesinger Nyxera," she said in a voice like wind through metal caves. "This one speaks like a true warrior." The small human acknowledges the danger, but chooses courage over safety. There is honor in this approach. Sarah led them through the ship, explaining human technology and culture as they walked. The Grimspawn asked surprisingly detailed questions about everything from their life support systems to their social structures. They seemed particularly fascinated by the concept of democracy and elected leadership. You choose your leaders based on the will of the many rather than the strength of the individual? Vexhi asked as they entered the ship's recreational area, where several off-duty crew members were playing cards and sharing stories. "That's right," Sarah confirmed. "We believe that the best decisions come from considering multiple perspectives and finding solutions that benefit the greatest number of people." The card players had noticed their alien visitors and were trying very hard to look casual while clearly being terrified. Petty Officer Johnson, a young woman from the agricultural colonies, dropped her cards when she saw the Grimspawn, her face going pale. But something unexpected happened. Instead of ignoring the humans or treating them with contempt, Vexhi approached the table with genuine interest. "What is this activity you perform?" he asked, his voice carrying none of the menace it had held during their initial communication. Johnson stammered for a moment before Sergeant Hayes, an older Marine with steady nerves, stepped in. "It's a card game, sir. A way to pass time and build camaraderie among the crew. Would you like to learn?" For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the Grimspawn warrior stared down at the simple playing cards scattered across the table. Then, with careful deliberation that suggested he was making a decision that went against every instinct he possessed, Vexhi lowered himself into a chair that creaked ominously under his weight. "Show me this game," he said simply. And in that moment, watching a creature that had been the stuff of galactic nightmares learning to play poker with a nervous petty officer and a grizzled Marine sergeant, Sarah Chun realized that she might be witnessing the beginning of something that would change the course of history itself. 3 days had passed since the Grimspawn had first boarded the Defiance, and the ship had become a strange fusion of two completely different worlds. Warcast Vexhi and his companions had established a temporary living area in Cargo Bay 7, which they had modified with their own equipment to accommodate their larger frames and different atmospheric preferences. The air in that section now carried the metallic tang of Grimspawn technology, but it was breathable for humans, a compromise that both species had worked out through careful negotiation and mutual respect. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the ship's observation lounge, watching through the transparent aluminum windows as Vexhi worked alongside Chief Engineer Martinez to repair damage to the Defiance's starboard engine array. The sight was surreal. A 7-foot-tall alien warrior with 4 arms working in perfect coordination with a human engineer, their different anatomies actually proving complementary as they tackled the complex repairs. "I never thought I'd live to see something like this," Dr. Harper said as she joined Sarah at the window. "According to every xenopsychological profile we have on the Grimspawn, they should have killed us all by now and taken our ship as a trophy. Instead, Vexhi spent 2 hours this morning teaching Lieutenant Rodriguez how to properly calibrate plasma conduits, and Battlesinger Nyxera has been working with our linguistics team to create a comprehensive translation protocol." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. "It's remarkable, but I can't shake the feeling that we're walking on very thin ice. These 3 Grimspawn may be willing to engage with us, but they're part of a much larger civilization that has built its entire identity around conquest and warfare. What happens when they return to their fleet? What happens when other Grimspawn learn about this contact?" Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the 3rd Grimspawn, swordbearer Kethvar, who had proven to be the most reserved and suspicious of the three visitors. Unlike his companions, Kethvar rarely interacted with the human crew and spent most of his time observing from a distance, his 6 eyes constantly scanning for threats or weaknesses. "Captain Chun," Kethvar said in his grinding voice, "I must speak with you privately. There are matters that require discussion before my caste leader returns to the fleet." Sarah exchanged a glance with Dr. Harper before nodding. "Of course, sword-bearer Kethvar. Dr. Harper, please excuse us." She led the massive alien to her private quarters, the corridor seeming to shrink around his imposing presence. Once they were alone, Kethvar's demeanor changed subtly. His stance remained alert and ready for combat, but there was something almost vulnerable in his expression. "You have shown us something unprecedented, Captain Chun. In all my centuries of existence, through countless battles and conquests, I have never encountered a species like yours." "How so?" Sarah asked, settling into her chair while the Grimspawn remained standing, his head nearly touching the ceiling. "You treat us as equals," Kethvar replied, his voice carrying a note of bewilderment. "Every other species we have encountered has responded to us with either terror or hatred. They see us as monsters to be feared or enemies to be destroyed. But your crew, they offer to share their food with us. They teach us their games. They work alongside us as if we were simply another group of travelers rather than the destroyers of worlds." Sarah studied the alien warrior's expression carefully. "Is that so unusual?" Respect and cooperation are fundamental parts of how humans interact with other intelligent beings. "You do not understand," Kethvar continued, his 4 hands clenching into fists. "We are the Grimspawn. We are death incarnate, the shadow that falls across dying civilizations. We have burned 1,000 worlds and enslaved 1,000,000 species. Our very name is spoken in whispers of terror across the galaxy. How can you look upon us and see anything other than monsters?" The pain in his voice was unmistakable, and Sarah felt her heart go out to this massive being who seemed to be struggling with concepts that challenged everything he had ever known about himself and his people. "Because that's not what I see when I look at you, Kethvar. I see a being who is capable of curiosity, who asks thoughtful questions about our technology and our culture. I see someone who has spent the last 3 days helping my crew with repairs instead of plotting our destruction. I see intelligence, honor, and the capacity for growth." Kethvar was silent for a long moment, his golden eyes fixed on some point beyond the walls of the ship. "Do you know how the Grimspawn came to be?" he finally asked. "Only what's in our historical records," Sarah admitted. "That your species emerged from the collapse of the predecessor civilization, that you've been expanding through the galaxy for over 3 millennia. The truth is more complex," Kethvar said, settling his massive frame onto the floor so that he could look at Sarah more directly. "We were not always the Grimspawn. Long ago, before the stars grew cold with the memory of our actions, we were called the Veltar. We were builders, creators, artists who shaped matter and energy into forms of incredible beauty. Our homeworld was a paradise of floating cities and crystalline forests, where music could be made visible and sculptures could sing." Sarah leaned forward, fascinated by this glimpse into the ancient history of one of the galaxy's most feared species. "What happened to change that?" "The Devourers came," Kethvar replied, his voice heavy with old grief. "A machine intelligence from beyond the galactic rim that consumed everything in its path, breaking down matter and energy to fuel its endless expansion. They struck without warning, without mercy, turning our beautiful world into a wasteland of twisted metal and screaming wind." He paused, his hands clenching and unclenching as if reliving the memory. "Those of us who survived the initial assault faced a choice: flee and preserve what remained of our culture, or transform ourselves into something capable of fighting back. We chose transformation. We altered our bodies, making ourselves stronger, faster, more resilient. We changed our minds, embracing the warrior's path and setting aside the artist's vision. We became the Grimspawn, children of vengeance and war. And you've been fighting that war ever since, Sarah realized. For 3,000 years, Kethvar confirmed. We defeated the Devourers, scattered their fragments across dead space. But the transformation had gone too deep. We could not return to what we had been. We were warriors now, and warriors need wars to give their existence meaning. So we found new enemies, new targets, new reasons to fight. Each victory made us stronger, but it also made us more distant from our original selves. Sarah was quiet for a moment, processing the implications of what she had heard. Kethvar, why are you telling me this? Surely this information is incredibly sensitive. The Grimspawn warrior looked at her with an expression that seemed almost human in its complexity. Because in these past 3 days, I have seen something that I thought was lost forever. When your crew members work together on a problem, when they share stories and laughter, when they create art and music simply for the joy of creation, I see echoes of what the Veltar once were. You humans have retained something that we abandoned long ago, the ability to find purpose in peace as well as in war. Before Sarah could respond, her communicator chirped with an incoming message. Captain, this is Rodriguez on the bridge. We're detecting multiple Grimspawn vessels approaching our position. They'll be here within the hour. Sarah's blood ran cold. How many ships, Lieutenant? Tolve, Mang. It looks like a full battle formation. Kethvar rose to his feet, his expression grim. Vexai has summoned the fleet. The other caste leaders will want to see these humans for themselves, to determine whether your species represents a threat or an opportunity. And what do you think they'll decide? Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. That depends, Kethvar replied, on whether we can show them what I have learned in these past days. Whether we can demonstrate that there is more than one way to find meaning in existence, that strength can come from creation as well as destruction. Sarah stood and straightened her uniform, preparing to face what might be the most important moment in human history. Then we'd better get to the bridge and prepare for the most unusual diplomatic reception in galactic history. As they made their way through the ship's corridors, Sarah noticed that the crew members they passed had a different quality to their movements. They were still nervous, still aware that they were about to face forces that could obliterate them without effort, but there was also a sense of determination, of purpose that hadn't been there before. They had spent 3 days working alongside beings they had been taught to fear, and that experience had changed them in fundamental ways. On the bridge, Vexai and Nixera were already present, standing beside the main view screen as the approaching Grimspawn fleet grew larger and more menacing. The vessels were works of dark art, their hull configurations designed to inspire terror as much as to deliver destruction. But Sarah found that after 3 days of exposure to Grimspawn culture, she could also see the beauty in their design, the elegant efficiency of form-following function. Captain Chun, Vexai said as she entered the bridge, my caste brothers approach. They come because I have sent them a message that they find difficult to believe, that we have encountered a species worthy of respect rather than conquest. The next few hours will determine whether that assessment proves correct or whether it leads to consequences that neither of our species desires. Sarah took her position in the captain's chair, surrounded by her crew and their unlikely alien guests. Then, let's make sure we show them the best of what humanity has to offer. Mr. Rodriguez, open a channel to the Grimspawn fleet. It's time to make history. The Grimspawn fleet hung in space like a collection of predatory beasts frozen in the moment before attack. 12 massive warships, each one capable of reducing entire worlds to glowing cinder, formed a perfect hunting formation around the tiny human vessel. Their hulls bore the accumulated battle scars of 3 millennia of warfare, and weapon ports glowed with barely contained energy that could unleash destruction on an unimaginable scale. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Defiance, acutely aware that she was looking at enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. But what struck her most was not the overwhelming military might arrayed before them, but the perfect precision of the formation. These ships moved with an almost artistic grace, their positions constantly shifting to maintain optimal tactical advantage while presenting a display of coordinated power that was both terrifying and beautiful. Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez called from his station, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. We're receiving transmission requests from all 12 vessels simultaneously. It appears each ship wants to establish separate contact protocols. Warcast Vex-High moved to stand beside Sarah's command chair, his massive presence somehow reassuring rather than threatening after 3 days of cooperation. This is the way of the testing, he explained in his grinding voice. Each cast leader will want to evaluate your species independently, to form their own judgment about whether humans represent friend, foe, or prey. Battlesinger Nixera stepped forward, her silver-marked armor catching the light from the tactical displays. Captain Shun, you must understand the significance of this moment. Never in recorded Grimspawn history has a first contact proceeded this way. Typically, we arrive, we assess, we conquer or destroy. But Vex-High's report has created uncertainty among the fleet commanders, and uncertainty makes us curious. What kind of assessments are they planning? Dr. Harper asked from her position at the science station. Swordbearer Kethvar, who had remained silent since they reached the bridge, finally spoke. They will test your courage, your intelligence, your tactical thinking, and your cultural strength. Each cast leader values different aspects of worthiness. Some will seek to provoke you into revealing weakness. Others will attempt to understand your technological capabilities, and still others will probe the depths of your social bonds. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. The decisions made in the next few hours could determine whether humanity gained powerful allies or became another entry in the Grimspawn's catalog of conquered species. How do you recommend we handle this, Vex-High? The massive alien warrior was quiet for a moment, his 6 golden eyes reflecting the tactical displays. Be yourselves, he said finally. You have shown us something unprecedented, the ability to treat potential enemies as potential friends. If you can demonstrate that same approach with the other cast leaders, you may accomplish something that will echo through galactic history. Rodriguez, accept all 12 transmission requests and route them to the main conference room, Sarah ordered. We'll meet with all the cast leaders simultaneously. If they want to evaluate humanity, they'll do it together. Several members of her bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Chief Security Williams stepped forward, his cybernetic implants whirring softly as they processed threat assessments. Captain, with all due respect, meeting with 12 Grimspawn cast leaders at once is far beyond standard first contact protocols. We have no idea what their intentions might be. No, Sarah replied, but we have something better. We have 3 days of experience working with these 3 Grimspawn, and what we've learned is that they're not the mindless killing machines the galaxy believes them to be. They're intelligent beings with complex motivations and the capacity for growth. The main conference room had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate beings of various sizes, with the ship's fabrication units working overtime to create seating and environmental controls suitable for multiple species. When Sarah entered the room 10 minutes later, she found herself facing a sight that would have sent most sentient beings fleeing in terror. 12 Grimspawn cast leaders filled the space, their collective presence creating an almost overwhelming sense of contained violence. Each warrior bore the distinctive markings of their specialty: weapon masters with arms covered in detailed schematics of destructive devices, fleet commanders with tactical displays woven into their armor, war singers whose very presence seemed to make the air vibrate with barely audible harmonics. At the center of the group sat a Grimspawn unlike any Sarah had yet encountered. This being was larger even than Vex-High, with armor that seemed to be carved from a single piece of midnight black metal. Golden inlays covered every surface, depicting scenes of battles fought across the galaxy, and his 6 eyes held an intelligence so profound that looking into them was like staring into the depths of space itself. I am Prime Warcast More Death. The central figure spoke, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Sarah's bones. I have heard remarkable claims from Vexhai about your species, human. Claims that challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of strength and the meaning of power. You will now justify these claims or face the consequences of wasting our time. Sarah had prepared for this moment, but facing the collected leadership of one of the galaxy's most dangerous civilizations was far more intimidating than she had anticipated. She drew upon every bit of training and experience she possessed, remembering the lessons learned during 3 days of unprecedented cooperation. Prime War Cast More Death. Honored cast leaders, I stand before you not as a conqueror or a supplicant, but as a representative of humanity seeking understanding between our peoples. We believe that strength comes not just from the ability to destroy, but from the ability to build, to create, and to forge bonds that make all participants stronger. One of the cast leaders, whose armor bore the flowing patterns of a fleet commander, leaned forward aggressively. Words are wind, human. You speak of bonds and cooperation, but what have you accomplished? What great victories have you won? What enemies have you vanquished? Before Sarah could respond, Chief Engineer Martinez stepped forward from his position near the wall. The gruff engineer looked incredibly small next to the assembled Grimspawn, but his voice was steady and confident. If I may, Captain, I'd like to answer that question. Martinez turned to address the fleet commander directly. 3 days ago, our starboard engine array was damaged beyond our ability to repair. Our ship was effectively crippled, unable to maintain course or defend itself. In human terms, we were dead in space. But Warcast Vexhai didn't see a weakness to exploit. He saw a problem to solve, and he worked alongside my engineering team to develop a solution that none of us could have achieved alone. The engineer activated a portable holographic display, showing detailed schematics of the repair work. This isn't human technology or Grimspawn technology. It's something new, something better than either of us could have created independently. That's what cooperation can accomplish. Several of the cast leaders exchanged glances, their expressions difficult to read, but clearly showing interest. A war singer with intricate silver patterns covering her arms spoke next. You show us technical cooperation, but what social bonds? The Grimspawn are warriors first and always. How can your species, which appears to lack our martial strength, offer anything of value to beings who have conquered half the galaxy? Dr. Harper stood up, her scientific mind clearly engaged by the challenge. Because conquest and cooperation serve different purposes, she replied. Conquest gives you temporary control over resources and territory, but cooperation creates lasting relationships that generate new possibilities. When Warcast Vexhai taught our crew how to optimize plasma conduit efficiency, he wasn't just sharing technical knowledge. He was participating in the creation of something that had never existed before, a fusion of human and Grimspawn engineering approaches. And when Petty Officer Johnson taught me the game you call poker, Vexhai added, his voice carrying what might have been amusement. She was not simply explaining rules and probabilities. She was sharing a cultural practice that reveals how humans balance risk, reward, cooperation, and competition in a controlled environment. Through that simple game, I learned more about human psychology than I could have gained from studying your species for years. Prime Warcast Mordeath had remained silent throughout this exchange, his golden eyes studying the humans with predatory intensity. Now he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. These are interesting concepts, but they remain theoretical. The Grimspawn are beings of action, not contemplation. If you truly believe in the power of this cooperation you described, you will demonstrate it under pressure. Sarah felt her heart rate accelerate. What kind of demonstration? Mordeath's expression became almost predatory. One of our deep space monitoring stations has detected an incursion by the Zektheri swarm in the Kepler 442 system. The swarm threatens to consume 3 inhabited worlds before a main battle fleet can arrive to stop them. This is a mission that would normally require significant Grimspawn resources and result in considerable casualties. He leaned forward, his 6 eyes focusing on Sarah with laser intensity. You will join a small Grimspawn task force in defending those worlds. If your cooperation philosophy proves effective in actual combat, we will consider your species worthy of alliance. If it proves inadequate, we will complete the mission alone and add Earth to our list of future conquests. The conference room fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's environmental systems. Sarah could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The next few words she spoke would determine the future relationship between two species that could either become the galaxy's greatest alliance or its most destructive war. "We accept your challenge, Prime Warcast More Death," she said finally. "But I have one condition. This won't be a test of human cooperation with Grimspawn tactics. It will be a true fusion of our approaches, with both species contributing their strengths to create something entirely new." Several of the cast leaders made sounds that might have been approval or amusement. Mordeath studied her for a long moment before rising to his feet, his massive frame dominating the room. "Interesting. Very well, human. You have 8 hours to prepare your vessel and coordinate with the task force. We depart for Kepler, 442 at the next tide cycle." As the cast leaders filed out of the conference room, each one pausing to study the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism, Sarah realized that everything her species had worked for, everything they had built and dreamed of, now depended on their ability to prove that cooperation could triumph over conquest when the galaxy itself hung in the balance. The Kepler 442 system was dying. Through the transparent aluminum of the Defiance's observation deck, Captain Sarah Chun watched as the Zektheri swarm consumed everything in its path like a plague of mechanical locusts. The alien drones moved in perfect synchronization, stripping matter from asteroids, space stations, and even the outer layers of planetary atmospheres to fuel their relentless expansion. 3 inhabited worlds hung in the balance. Kepler 442b, home to the peaceful Thraki civilization. Kepler 442c, a mining world populated by hardy Denevan colonists. And Kepler 442d, a research station studying exotic matter phenomena. Together, these worlds housed over 40 million sentient beings who had no way to defend themselves against the swarm's inexorable advance. "Captain, the Grimspawn task force is moving into position," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from the bridge. 5 heavy cruisers, 2 battleships, and what appears to be some kind of specialized command vessel. Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the tactical displays showing the swarm's deployment patterns. In the 8 hours since accepting Mordeath's challenge, she and her crew had worked with Warcast Vexi and his companions to develop an entirely new approach to combat coordination. It was ambitious, unprecedented, and potentially catastrophic if it failed. "Dr. Harper, what's the status on the neural interface system?" Sarah asked. The ship's chief medical officer looked up from her console, exhaustion clear in her expression. "We've managed to create a stable connection between human and Grimspawn command systems. The translation protocols are functioning, but I have to warn you, Captain, we're essentially creating a battlefield telepathy network between 2 species that have never attempted anything like this before. The psychological stress could be overwhelming." Chief Engineer Martinez emerged from an access panel where he'd been making final adjustments to the hybrid systems they'd developed. "The good news is that the Grimspawn plasma conduit modifications have increased our power output by 30%. The potentially catastrophic news is that we're about to find out whether human intuition and Grimspawn tactical precision can actually work together under combat stress." Sarah made her way to the bridge, where she found Warcast Vexi standing beside the captain's chair in a gesture that had become familiar over the past few days. The massive alien warrior had undergone his own transformation during their time together, his aggressive posture softening into something that almost resembled companionship. "Captain Chun," Vexi said in his grinding voice, "Prime Warcast Mordeath has transmitted the battle plan. It is a typically Grimspawn approach. Direct assault, overwhelming force, minimal concern for casualties beyond ensuring mission success." "And what do you think of this approach?" Sarah asked. Vexhai's 6 golden eyes met hers, and she saw something in their depths that would have been impossible to imagine a week ago: uncertainty. I think it will result in the destruction of the swarm, the successful defense of the 3 worlds, and the loss of approximately 60% of the task force. It is an acceptable outcome by traditional Grimspawn standards, but not by human standards, Sarah observed. No, Vexhai agreed. In the past 3 days, I have learned that there are alternatives to acceptable losses. Your species seeks optimal outcomes, solutions that preserve as much life as possible while still achieving strategic objectives. This is a concept that challenges everything I have been taught about the nature of warfare. Battlesinger Nixera entered the bridge, her silver-marked armor gleaming under the tactical displays. Captain, I have been monitoring communications from the other Grimspawn vessels. The cast leaders are curious about what you will propose. Many of them expect you to request a support role, providing technical assistance while the Grimspawn warriors handle the actual combat. That's not what we're going to do, Sarah replied firmly. Rodriguez, open a channel to all ships in the task force. It's time to show them what human Grimspawn cooperation really means. The main view screen lit up with a split display showing the command centers of all 7 Grimspawn vessels. The alien warriors looked at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed skepticism. Prime Warcast, More Death, dominated the central position, his midnight black armor making him look like a living shadow against the gleaming technology of his flagship. Honored cast leaders, Sarah began. We've spent the last 8 hours developing an alternative to the standard assault approach. What I'm about to propose has never been attempted in galactic history, and it requires a level of trust and cooperation that goes far beyond anything either of our species has experienced before. She activated the tactical hologram, showing a 3-dimensional representation of the Kepler 442 system with the swarm's positions clearly marked. The Zekthari operate through distributed processing networks. Each drone is relatively weak, but they gain exponential power through coordination. Traditional tactics focus on destroying as many individual units as possible, but this approach is inefficient and costly. Fleet Commander Zarketh, whose vessel specialized in long-range bombardment, leaned forward with interest. What alternative do you propose, human? We target their coordination nodes, Sarah replied, highlighting specific points in the swarm formation. Dr. Harper's analysis indicates that the Zekthari use quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across vast distances. If we can disrupt these links simultaneously across multiple points, the entire swarm will fragment into individual units that can be easily defeated. War Master Thexani, whose armor bore the scars of countless battles, made a sound that might have been skepticism. This requires perfect timing and coordination across multiple targets. No fleet has ever achieved such precision. No single fleet, Sarah agreed. But we're not proposing to operate as separate vessels following a single command structure. We're proposing to operate as a unified organism, with human intuition guiding Grimspawn tactical precision in real time through shared consciousness networks. The bridge fell silent as the implications of her proposal sank in. What Sarah was suggesting went beyond military cooperation. It was a fundamental fusion of 2 different approaches to problem solving. Prime Warcast More Death studied the tactical display with predatory intensity. You wish to create a battlefield mind meld between human and Grimspawn consciousness. This is beyond unprecedented. It is nearly incomprehensible. How do you propose to achieve such coordination? Dr. Harper stepped forward, her scientific excitement overriding her nervousness at addressing such powerful beings. We've developed a neural interface protocol that creates shared tactical awareness without compromising individual consciousness. Human creativity and adaptability combined with Grimspawn precision and firepower, all coordinated through quantum-entangled communication networks. The risks are enormous, Swordbearer Kethvar observed. If the interface fails during combat, it could leave both species vulnerable to swarm counterattacks. And if it succeeds, Vexhai added, his voice carrying a note of wonder. It could change the fundamental nature of how intelligent species interact in crisis situations. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew, seeing determination mixed with fear in their expressions. Then, she turned back to the view screen, meeting Mordeth's gaze directly. Prime Warcast, I'm not asking you to trust human technology or human tactics. I'm asking you to trust the bond that's been growing between our peoples over the past 3 days. Warcast Vexhai, Battlesinger Nixera, and Sorbearer Kethvar have worked alongside my crew, shared meals with us, taught us, and learned from us. They've seen what we can accomplish together. Mordeth was quiet for a long moment, his massive frame perfectly still as he processed the implications of the decision before him. Around him, the other caste leaders waited for his judgment, their own expressions reflecting the internal struggle between 3 millennia of military tradition and the possibility of something entirely new. Very well, Mordeth said finally. We will attempt this unprecedented cooperation. But understand, Captain Shun, that failure will result not only in the loss of the 3 worlds we have come to defend, but in the termination of any possibility of alliance between our species. Understood, Sarah replied. Initiating neural interface protocols now. The next few minutes passed in a blur of technological activity as the hybrid systems came online. Sarah felt a strange, tingling sensation as the neural interface activated, and suddenly, her consciousness seemed to expand beyond the confines of her individual mind. She could sense the presence of her crew members, their thoughts, and emotions creating a complex web of shared awareness. But, more remarkably, she could also sense the Grimspawn warriors throughout the task force. Their minds were different from human consciousness, more focused and disciplined, but also capable of incredible tactical complexity. Warcast Vexhai's presence was the strongest, his consciousness somehow serving as a bridge between human intuition and Grimspawn precision. All vessels, this is Captain Chun. She broadcast through both traditional communications and the neural network. Swarm forces are moving into attack position against the innermost planet, initiating coordinated strike pattern now. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded galactic history. The human Grimspawn task force moved with perfect synchronization, their attacks precisely timed to disrupt the swarm's coordination nodes exactly when they were most vulnerable. Human creativity identified unexpected tactical opportunities, while Grimspawn precision ensured that every shot found its target. The Zek theory, evolved to face conventional military tactics, found themselves completely unable to adapt to this new form of warfare. Within 30 minutes, their vast swarm had been reduced to millions of individual drones that posed no significant threat to the defended worlds. As the last of the enemy units was destroyed, Sarah felt the neural network beginning to dissolve, leaving her with a profound sense of loss as the shared consciousness faded back to individual minds. But something had changed, something that went deeper than tactical cooperation or military alliance. Prime War cast more death, she said, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate with Grimspawn communication patterns. I believe our peoples have just discovered something that neither of us possessed alone. Mordeth's response came not just through the communication system, but through the fading echoes of the neural network, carrying emotions and concepts that had never before passed between their species. Indeed, Captain Chun, you have shown us that strength can be multiplied rather than simply added, that cooperation can achieve what conquest never could. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that suggested the formal pronouncement of a decision that would echo through galactic history. The Grimspawn offer alliance to the humans, not the traditional alliance of the strong with the useful, but true partnership between equals who have proven they can become more than the sum of their parts. As celebration erupted on the bridge around her, Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Warcast Vexhai, his massive frame somehow conveying gentleness despite his fearsome appearance. Captain Shun, the alien warrior said, and then, in a voice filled with wonder and discovery, He spoke a word that no Grimspawn had ever spoken before: friend. The word hung in the air like a bridge between worlds, and Sarah realized that they had not just saved 3 planets or forged a military alliance. They had accomplished something far more profound. They had proven that the most feared warriors in the galaxy could learn to value creation over destruction, cooperation over conquest, and friendship over fear. In the months that followed, as news of the human Grimspawn alliance spread across the galaxy, other species would indeed begin to shake. But not with fear of the Grimspawn's traditional weapons and tactics. They would shake with the realization that the galaxy's most dangerous predators had learned to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of conquer, and to turn former enemies into friends who would fight and die for each other. And it had all begun with a single word spoken by a warrior who had discovered that there was more than one way to be strong.